Hello everyone, and welcome to today's video. Now this is a very special video as I have compiled 3 haunting experiences from people who live in haunted homes in St. Paul, Minnesota. Thank you to the viewers who submitted these stories, and if you're interested in sharing your stories, please send them to the email listed in the description below. Before we get started, please remember to leave a like and subscribe, and without further ado, enjoy the show. This story probably happened around the late 2000s. The house itself had already been around for a long time before that. It was in one of those older neighborhoods in St. Paul, Minnesota. The houses were close together, the yards were small, and the basements were unfinished. The house belonged to my aunt and uncle at the time. It wasn't big from the outside, but once you went inside, it felt longer than it looked. The front door opened into a small living room with one big window facing the street. On the left was a hallway with 2 bedrooms and a bathroom. On the right was a dining area and then the kitchen, and the kitchen had a back door that went out to the porch and backyard. The basement stairs were between the kitchen and dining area. They were steep and narrow, and the lights downstairs were weak. Even if you turned it on, the basement still looked dark. Downstairs, they had a laundry, storage shelves, and one room that my uncle used for tools and old furniture. Nobody liked going downstairs alone. Upstairs was not really a full upstairs. It was more like an attic bedroom. There was a small staircase near the hallway, and when you climbed up, there was one open room with low ceilings and slanted walls. During family gatherings, the older cousins liked to go up there to hang out away from the adults. That house was where our family gathered a lot. Birthdays, parties, get-togethers, cookouts. My aunt cooked a lot of food, and everyone else would also bring their own food. The adults would sit in the kitchen and dining room and living room talking, and us kids would be running around the whole entire house. The first strange thing that I remembered happened during one of those gatherings. It was around winter time, so it got dark pretty early. I remember there being snow outside because our shoes were wet by the front door, and my aunt kept yelling at us to not step on the carpet with our socks. There were a lot of us cousins there that night. I don't remember the exact number, but I want to say maybe 9 or 10 kids total. After eating, we got bored and started playing hide-and-seek in the dark. One of my cousins thought of the idea of us playing hide-and-seek downstairs in the basement since nobody was using it. Since there were a lot of us, we weren't really scared, so we all went downstairs into the basement to play hide-and-seek in the dark. And, well, if you already didn't know, that was a pretty bad idea. One of my older cousins was counting. The rest of us ran around trying to hide behind old furniture, under shelves, and all that stuff. It wasn't a serious game. We were just laughing and being loud. Eventually, everybody got caught, and after most of us got caught, one of my cousins said, "Wait, how many people are playing?" We all started to count each other. There was me, my brother, 2 of my girl cousins, and a bunch of other kids. I remember one of the older cousins counting with his finger and saying that there's 10 of us. Then one of my girl cousins said, "No, there's supposed to be 9. We all started arguing because kids always argue over simple things. One cousin said that someone was hiding, another person said that somebody maybe went upstairs. Then one of my younger cousins pointed near the wall in the basement and said, "No, he's right there." I looked where she pointed, and there was a little boy standing next to the wall. At first, I didn't think anything of it. He was sitting in that dark spot where the light didn't really reach that well. I couldn't really see his face clearly. I just thought that he was one of the younger cousins from another family. When you have a big family gathering, sometimes you don't even know every kid who shows up. One of my cousins asked him if he was playing, but the boy didn't answer. We were all just staring at him, but I remembered that he looked kind of small, maybe kindergarten age or 1st grade. He had short hair and a dark shirt. His skin looked pale, but then again the room was dark, so I didn't think too much about it. One of my older cousins said, "Who is that?" That's when it got quiet. Nobody answered. One of the younger kids got scared and ran upstairs. Once they did that, the rest of us started following them upstairs, tripping over each other. When we got to the top of the stairs, the adults were yelling at us, wondering what the heck we were doing. They thought that we were fighting. My aunt asked us what happened, and we tried to explain that there was an extra kid playing with us. She looked at all of us and said that maybe we counted wrong. My uncle laughed and said that we were probably just scared and scared ourselves while we were playing in the dark. After that, we counted ourselves, and it turned out there were 9 of us. None of us really wanted to go back downstairs to see who that kid was. That was one of the weird things that happened in that house. It was strange because we were kids and we eventually just moved on from it. We didn't really have any proof that there was another kid downstairs. Keep in mind, we didn't have any iPads or phones during that time, and honestly, we could have just counted wrong. But that wasn't the only thing that happened in that house. One time, I slept over at my cousin's house there with my brother. My aunt had asked my mom if we wanted to stay because our cousins were there and we had no school the next day. So we all slept in the living room with blankets with the other kids. The adults slept in the room. I remember waking up in the middle of the night because I felt pressure on my chest. I could see the ceiling above me and I could hear the heater blowing. I tried to move, but I couldn't. At first, I thought my blanket was too heavy, or maybe my brother had rolled onto me. But when I opened my eyes, I could see that nobody was touching me. My body just wouldn't move, and that's when I realized that I had sleep paralysis. I had heard older people talking about getting slept on before, but at that age I didn't understand it that much. I only knew that when it happened, you were supposed to try to move your fingers or toes and pray in your head. So I tried to move my fingers, but nothing happened. I felt this pressure like somebody was sitting on top of me. I wanted to turn my head, but I couldn't. I could only move my eyes. I looked toward the hallway, and then I saw a shadow standing near the bathroom door. It wasn't fully shaped like a person, but it was tall enough that I knew it wasn't one of the kids. I kept telling myself that it was just probably a coat hanging on a door or something in the hallway. But the longer that I looked at it, the more it felt like it was looking back at me. Eventually, the pressure lifted off my chest and I sat up fast. I woke up my brother and told him to move closer to me. He got mad and told me to go back to sleep. I didn't sleep much after that. The next morning, I didn't tell anybody, and I honestly just forgot about it because we just kept playing in the house. But after that, whenever we went to my aunt and uncle's house, I never liked being alone in the living room. Another thing that happens in that house is that objects would disappear. This was something that was common, and even my cousins told me about it. They told me that they had this old Nintendo game. I can't remember if it was a Game Boy or something similar, but it was one of the small ones that all of us cousins always fought over. He kept it in a drawer in the living room stand, and one day he just could not find it. He accused all of us of taking it, and we all denied it. The adults got annoyed because he kept crying over it. My aunt searched the whole living room, the drawer, the couch, and even the kitchen, but she couldn't find it. She told him that maybe he lost it somewhere. A few days later, my cousin found it sitting in the middle of the basement stairs. Not at the top, not at the bottom, but right in the middle of the stairs. Nobody knew how it got there. My cousin said that he had not gone into the basement, but we weren't really sure if we believed it or not. We just kind of laughed it off. My cousin would also tell me that these things happened more than once with different things. Keys, the TV remote, one of my aunt's jewelries, and all their items and stuff would just kind of go missing and then disappear and show up somewhere weird. The missing items would eventually show up in places that people already checked, or sometimes in very weird places, like inside a shoe. My aunt and uncle tried to blame the kids, which made sense, but some places just did not make sense where they would end up. Now, years later, when we got older, I asked my cousin if he remembered the extra kid from hide and seek. He said that he did, but he told me he never liked talking about it because he always thought that he was the only one who saw that kid really clearly. I asked him what he meant by that, and he said that when they were playing hide and seek, he looked straight at him, and he noticed that the boy's face was too smooth, like there were features, but they weren't all the way there. He said that he remembered the boy looking sad, not angry or anything else, just sad. I don't know what that means, but my uncle and aunt don't live in that house anymore. They moved out years ago for normal reasons, not because of ghosts or anything like that. But I still think that that house was haunted, and maybe that was a small reason that led them to moving out. The weird thing was that nothing in that house ever felt evil to me. It felt more like there were presences there, like ghosts and spirits, but they were just trying to mind their own business just as much as we were. That was my cousin's haunted house, and if there's any more stories that I remember, I'll remember to share it with you. This story I'm going to write a little differently because the hauntings and experiences was not like one big event. It happened in my old house in St. Paul, Minnesota. The things that happened there were like a bunch of small things that happened over the years until our whole family just accepted that the house was not normal. We moved there when I was in high school. The house was old, but it wasn't falling apart. It had hardwood floors that creaked a lot, a basement that always felt cold, and a back room that nobody really used unless we needed storage. My parents liked it because the rent was decent, it was close to some of our cousins and relatives, and it was close to school and their work. At first, I honestly really liked the house. My room was upstairs with my younger brother. My parents had the room downstairs, and my sisters slept near the hallway. It was kind of the house where you could hear everything. If someone walked into the kitchen or opened the basement door, everybody knew. Because of this, we started hearing footsteps. Nobody thought that it was strange at first. I remember one of my first time ever hearing it. I was watching TV in the living room late at night. It was probably around midnight and everybody else had already gone to sleep. I was supposed to be asleep too, but it was the weekend, so I stayed up. The living room lights were off and only the TV light was on. Then I heard footsteps upstairs. It sounded like low and slow steps. They were kind of walking around quietly. At first, I thought it was my brother walking to the bathroom, so I didn't look away from the TV. But then I heard the steps go from one side of the upstairs hallway to the other side, then stop near the top of the stairs. I waited for someone to come down. I was still watching the TV, but nobody did. So I lowered the TV volume and listened. But I didn't hear anything. Then the footsteps started again, but this time they went down the stairs, slowly, one step at a time. Our stairs made a different sound than the hallway, so I knew it was coming down. I sat there, staring at the staircase. I expected to see my brother or maybe even one of my sisters. Then the footsteps reached the bottom. Nobody was there. I remember feeling pretty scared and I had goosebumps. I wasn't fully frightened, but I had that heavy feeling when something doesn't match what you're seeing. I turned off the TV and went straight to my room. I didn't even check because that's not something I would have done. I was trying not to be brave or anything. I just wanted to go to sleep and act like I didn't hear it. The next morning, I asked my brother if he went downstairs the night before. He said no, so I asked my sisters, and they said no too. My mom said that the house was old and sometimes old houses make sounds, and that made sense to me, so I just decided to agree with it. Now, in that house, one of my sisters also saw a shadow. She said that she was in the kitchen getting water. It was late at night, maybe around 10 or 11, but it wasn't midnight yet. The kitchen light was on and the living room was dark. She said that she saw someone walk from the hallway into the living room. It was a dark figure, tall and fast. She thought it was me, so she called up my name. I was upstairs. She came running upstairs and asked if I had just gone downstairs, and I told her no. She then got really scared because she knew what she saw. I went downstairs with her and checked the living room. There was nobody there. The front door was locked, the back door was locked, and all the windows were closed. Now, this shadow was seen by different people at different times. Sometimes it looked like a person walking down the hallway. My brother also said that he saw it standing near the kitchen entrance, and one time my younger sister said that she saw it standing by the basement door. The thing about this shadow that I want to tell you is that it never ran or tried to scare anybody. It just kind of appeared and disappeared. That made us pretty scared because we were wondering to ourselves if we really saw it or if it was just a shadow or if we were tired. Now, that was the part about the shadows. The next part that I'm going to share next is a little bit more freaky. One time, I was sleeping in my room upstairs. My brother was sleeping on the other side of the room. We had separate beds and it was winter, so I had a thick blanket. I remember waking up because I felt cold on my legs. At first, I thought I kicked the blanket off in my sleep, but then I felt the blanket move again. It tugged from the bottom. Not hard, just a slow pull. I opened my eyes and looked toward the foot of my bed. It was dark, but I could just see the shape of my blanket sliding down a little. I thought maybe it was stuck on the bed frame, or maybe my foot was pulling on it, so I lifted my head. The blanket lifted and pulled again. This time, I saw it come down to my knees. I froze. I wanted to yell for my brother, but I felt embarrassed for some reason. I was in high school at this point. I didn't want to scream over a blanket, so I reached down and grabbed it, pulling it back up fast. For a few seconds, nothing happened. Then, something pulled back. That was when I sat up and said my brother's name. He didn't answer. That guy was knocked out cold. I got up and turned on the light, and the whole room looked normal. Nothing was there. I checked under the bed, even though I didn't want to, and there was nothing there. I slept with the lamp on that night. The next morning, my brother asked me why the lamp was on when he woke up. I told him about what had happened, and he just laughed at first. But then he said that something else had also pulled his blanket before too. I thought he was just messing with me, so we just left it at that. Now, going back to the footsteps also started happening during the day. One weekend afternoon, my mom and I were the only ones home. She was cooking and I was in the living room folding laundry. We heard someone walking upstairs. Not a small sound, but it sounded like full footsteps. My mom stopped cutting vegetables and looked at me. She asked if my brother was at home or if my sisters were home, and I said that no, they weren't, and that everybody else had gone with my dad. The footsteps moved across the upstairs hallway, then stopped above the kitchen. My mom turned off the stove and told me to stay there. She grabbed her phone and called my dad. She did not want to go upstairs by herself. My mom told my dad that maybe someone had broke in upstairs. My dad came home with my siblings, and they all checked every room, closet, and window. Nothing was open, and nothing was missing. The upstairs windows were locked from the inside. After that, my mom started to really believe that our house was haunted. She didn't say that it was exactly a ghost, but one time I remember her lighting up some incense and some joss paper and telling the spirit or whatever it was to leave us alone and that this wasn't its house and that she will burn some money for it so that it could move on into the afterlife. There was also another experience that happened, but it happened to my dad, and he didn't tell us about it until years later. He told us that one day he had woken up early to go to work. It It was around 4:30 in the morning, and he was preparing some food in the kitchen when he saw someone standing in the hallway. He thought that it was my mom, so he said her name. The figure didn't answer. He turned on the hallway light and it was gone. He decided to check the bedroom, and my mom was still sleeping. He told me later that he didn't wake her up because he didn't want to scare her. But he said that from that day on, he always turned on every light before going into the kitchen. The last thing I remembered from that house, from before we moved, was that I was home alone after school. It was still daylight, and I was sitting at the dining table doing some homework. The house was quiet. Then I heard footsteps upstairs again. By then, I was used to it, but I still didn't like it. I kept my head down and tried to ignore it. The footsteps moved from my room to the hallway and then to my sister's room. Then something dragged across the floor upstairs. That bothered me because footsteps are one thing, but dragging something is different. I grabbed my backpack and walked outside. I decided to sit on the front steps and do my homework until my mom came home. When my family checked later, one of the storage boxes in my sister's room had been moved from the closet to the middle of the floor. Nobody had been home. We moved not too long after that, not only because of the haunting, but my parents had other reasons too. I have driven to that neighborhood a few times, but I never slowed down near that house. I don't know who lives there anymore, or if they hear footsteps too, but it seems like that family seems to be doing just fine. My story is about a house that my family rented in St. Paul for a short time. I don't remember the exact year, but it was sometimes after security cameras became common in people's houses. We had a small security system set up inside because my parents worked a lot, and my younger siblings would sometimes come home from school before anyone else did. It wasn't anything fancy, just a few motion cameras that we ordered online that we set up around the house. The house itself looked normal. It had a front porch, a living room, a kitchen, 3 bedrooms, and a basement. The landlords told us that the previous tenants had moved out suddenly, but he made it sound like a family issue. We didn't ask too many questions. When the place is affordable, sometimes you just hope that everything else works out. Now, the house was pretty normal for the most part. There were a few things that happened that I want to share. One time, my mom had a dream. At first, she didn't tell us. She just seemed tired. One time, I asked if she was okay, and she said that she had a weird dream. I asked what that was about, and she said that she dreamed of an older woman standing by the basement door. In the dream, the older woman told her, "This isn't your house." My mom was trying to apologize to the lady, telling her that they are already living in this house and that they rent it. But the older lady kept telling her that this wasn't their home and that this was already their home and that they need to move out. After that, my mom said that she woke up right after that. I told her that it was probably because we had just moved in and that she was just maybe stressed. She agreed and told me that it was just probably nothing. A few nights later, she had another dream. This time, she said that the same woman was standing in the kitchen, but there was also an older man sitting at the table. They were both looking at her. The woman told her again that we needed to leave. My mom told them that this was already our house and that we're already renting it, we're paying the bills, and that this was our house and it belonged to us. Then the older woman told her that they had been staying there for a long time and that the home belonged to them and that we were the ones that were supposed to move out. My mom woke up and she said that she heard water running. She thought that someone had left the sink on, so she got up and checked the kitchen, turning on all the lights. She didn't see anything. She checked the bathrooms and nothing. Even after this, she could still hear water running around somewhere in the walls. The next day, she told my dad, and my dad checked everything. He looked under the sinks, he checked the basement, and there was nothing wrong. There were no leaks, nothing that was wet, and no problems. Once in a while, we would hear that sound of running water. It didn't happen all the time, but it would happen once in a while and just enough that we remembered it. It sounded like it would be a faucet that was turned on somewhere far away, but it wasn't dripping at all. It was just like running water, like you turned on the handle and the water was running. However, even when the water was running, we could never find the source of that sound. We would check everything, and eventually we just learned to live with it. I remember one time when I heard the sound of the running water. I was in my room trying to sleep. It was on a school night. It sounded like someone was taking a shower in the bathroom. Keep in mind, this was in the middle of the night and nobody should be up that late. I got annoyed because I thought one of my siblings was up late. I opened my door and looked down the hallway. The bathroom light was off and the door was open. Nobody was inside. The sound of water was still going, so I walked into the kitchen, turned on all the lights, and nothing. Then I walked near the basement door, and the sound got louder. It sounded like it was coming from the basement. I did not go down there. I turned around and went back to my room. That was probably the smartest thing I could do because honestly, I had no reason to go into a dark basement at night. The next day, I told my dad about what I had heard, and he and I went down into the basement to check it out, but there was nothing down there. No wet spots, no running water, nothing. Remember how I mentioned earlier that we had set up security cameras in our house? Well, one day, the cameras started to go off. The first time that it happened, all of us were out. My parents were at work, and we were at school. My phone buzzed with a motion alert from the living room camera. I opened it, maybe expecting to see a shadow from the sunlight or a car passing by. But the video showed the empty living room. Nothing moved. I thought that maybe the camera detected light changing from a car passing outside, so I just closed it. Then, another alert came in from the kitchen camera. Again, I didn't see anything. And that was basically it for that time when I experienced that. But eventually, this started to kind of happen more frequently. Our family were getting alerts from the security camera. It was coming from the kitchen, sometimes we would get motion detected in the hallway, and there was just a bunch of weird things. One time, there was a clip of a motion detected by the hallway, and the weird thing was that the hallway was empty, but near the end of the clip, the basement door moved just slightly. It didn't open all the way, it just shifted, like someone had touched it from the other side. During my lunch break, I sent the video to my dad and told him about what I saw. When we got home, the basement door was closed, and after my dad came home from work, we checked the basement and didn't find anything. He said that maybe the doorknob was loose or maybe the latch was just loose and that he'll fix it one of these days. One day, my mom and my siblings went grocery shopping. My dad was at a relative's house. Nobody was home. While we were at the store, my mom's phone started buzzing non-stop. There was motion in the hallway, in the living room, and in the kitchen, and then back to the hallway again. My mom got annoyed and said that maybe these cameras were broken. She opened the live view while we were standing in the aisle. The living room was empty, but we could hear water running through the camera audio. My mom stopped moving. I heard it too. It sounded like the kitchen sink was on full blast, but in the video, the sink was right below the camera, so we couldn't really see it. We checked out of the grocery store really fast and drove back home. When we got there, the whole house was quiet. There was no water running, no wet floor, and all the faucets were off. It was dry. That night, my mom told my dad that she didn't think that the dreams were just dreams anymore. My dad, being the guy, didn't want to talk about ghosts. He just said to ignore it and that everything will be just fine and he'll reach out to somebody to help us out. Then, one time, my mom had a really bad dream. She dreamt of the older woman again. This time, the woman was standing at the foot of my parents' bed. She told my mom, "You already heard us. Why are you still here? If you don't leave, we're gonna make sure that you see." This older lady spoke to my mom in Hmong. My mom woke up and saw that the bedroom door was slowly closing. She woke up my dad right away, and he got up and checked the hallway. Nobody was there, my siblings were asleep, I was asleep, and the front and back doors were locked. My mom didn't tell us about this dream until many years later. She said that she didn't want to scare us at the time. This also reminded me of another dream that I had. In the dream, I was standing in the basement, even though I really hated the basement and I never went down there alone. The light was on, but everything looked kind of gray. There was water on the floor, but it didn't cover my feet. It was just moving across the concrete like a thin layer. Near the laundry area, I saw an older man standing with his back to me. I didn't know who he was, but he turned around and told me to tell my mom and our family to leave, and that this was his and his wife's house. After that, I woke up and my heart was pounding. I remembered the last thing he said, so the next day I got up and I told my parents about what I had dreamt about. They played it off and said that it was probably just nothing and that I might have just ate a little bit too much before I went to bed. You know how Hmong OGs are. After that though, my parents finally asked around. They didn't ask the landlord because they didn't feel like he was being honest. My mom asked one of the neighbors. It was an older lady who had lived on the block for many years. The neighbor didn't give a full story, but she said that the house had been through a lot of renters. She said that there had been an older couple who lived there before, not right before us, but years earlier. She said that the husband passed away first, but the wife stayed there a little while after, and then she passed away too. My mom asked if anyone had died in that house, and the neighbor got quiet and said that she did see a couple of ambulances come by a few times. That answer was enough for my mom. After that, we started to look for another place. We didn't move out right away because moving wasn't easy, but, my parents were looking around. Eventually, my parents found a new house that was located in Woodbury. So, my family and we packed our things and decided to leave that house. Nothing really happened during the time that we were packing up. I think that the spirits knew that we were leaving, so they just decided to leave us alone. It's been years now, and I still think about that house from time to time. I'm not sure if anyone else lives there, but I'm glad that we no longer live in that area. Have you guys ever caught any strange experiences or ghosts or pictures or anything like that on camera? Because if it was me and I caught something like that, I'm not sure if I would share it with people either. Like, it's kind of a common thing in the Hmong community and belief that sharing those kind of pictures and videos is basically considered bad luck. It's almost like you're opening a portal to that kind of stuff. It's like you are acknowledging that those things are there and that you want them to be there. And so a lot of Hmong elders and OGs often tell us younger folks to, not share those scary and spooky experiences. So maybe that's why the viewer who submitted that last story didn't share that video with me, which is fine. I don't want to see it anyways. But, St. Paul's got some pretty old homes. There have been some homes that I've driven by that legit look like they are abandoned. And I wonder sometimes if people even live in them, or maybe they just have random homeless people or squatters living in those homes. And then the first story about the kids playing hide and seek and then finding out that there is an extra kid, I feel like that's such a common occurrence. And that's why, a lot of the adults in my family always tell us to never play hide and seek in the dark. But we still did it anyways. And I'm glad that nothing happened. But, let me know if you guys have experienced something like that. Now, in regards to the second story, I've heard of another experience that one of my uncles had when they lived in their old home. I don't remember where it was, maybe somewhere in Wisconsin. But he told me that one time he was asleep and he remembered something violently pulling the blanket, pulling and dragging his blanket across his bed and onto the floor. And that woke him up and he turned on the nightlight and everything, the lamp, and there was nothing there. And that freaked him out so much. And that's all he told me. He just said, yeah, one day I was sleeping and then something dragged my blanket, pulled it across the floor, and I was so scared. And then that was that. And then we just kept on drinking like nothing ever happened. But anyways, let me know what you guys think about the video in the comment section below. And if you haven't already, remember to leave a like and subscribe. I really need those adult beverages. I just can't live without them. So if you guys could just do me a favor and click that subscribe button. And YouTube's also telling me that you might like this video on screen. And without further ado, I will see you guys all in the next video. Goodbye, everybody.